Greetings. This is Paul the Poke from paulthepoke.com. Some of you folks may also know me as just plain old Paul Lehr. I'm an original content provider at valortube.com. We're going to consolidate forces tonight, and we're going to put both websites. Content of this is going up on both websites tonight. Too much going on to separate, divide, and conquer. So, welcome. Appreciate everybody taking the time on a Friday night. Dateline, we are February 11, 2022, and we're going to provide an operational update on the happenings and goings on between what is the Russia and Ukraine conflict. So we're going to have an operational update. And again, you can follow this at a couple of places. Number one, you can follow this on my particular website at paulthepoke.com. All things go up. We got other things going on besides Ukraine and Russia. We got Bible studies, prophecy studies, and so forth. But the bulk of this tonight is going to be as a big shout out and a thank you to another fellow original content provider. And that would be the Fighting Czekmates. And he is an original content provider at valortube.com. So for those of you who are not familiar with Czekmate, here's a little bit about him. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, but I do want you to know where he's coming from. I think it's important to get in touch with your instincts and don't get married to your opinions. We welcome good-natured argument. We tolerate stubbornness, but not rudeness or trolling. So, Czekmate is a nom de guerre for a Washington, D.C. based consultant who specializes in international affairs and national security regulatory matters, holds a master's degree in national security and strategic studies from the U.S. Naval War College, worked in Republican politics, Congress, and the Department of State and Defense for the bulk of his career. Received awards for research pertaining to international illicit weapons networks. Okay, he's a Christian and a practitioner of charismatic faith whose current work involved advising clients on cybersecurity compliance in the defense arena. Okay, so some of this stuff, some of you folks are going to hear, you're going to think, oh, this guy's full of hot air. That's for you to make up your own judgment, but I'm telling you, he's spot on. He knows what he's talking about. This is what he does for a living. He's done his homework and then some. And this is your operational update for February 11th, 2022. This is through his homepage at valortube.com. So if you go to valortube.com, find Czekmate. And this is a little flavor of what he provides. And we're going to look at this mostly through the eyes of Russia and Ukraine. We got some other things that he's posted. That's going to go up later this evening. Going to have another post of some things that I've been watching as well. But just to give you a flavor for this is Czekmate's comments. Look who is reporting on Ukraine just in time. Deep state vinegar pot Amanpour. This whole thing smells. Too bad the most honest broker in the whole thing is equally crooked. And that's Putin's government. Christian Amanpour, a Ukrainian official close to the government's thinking, tells us, quote, the situation is really serious and uncertain. There is a distinct change in their tone. He follows the news, so he's going to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the news and provide his commentary. All ahead flank indicate 120 RPM, steady as she goes. Arleigh Burke class destroyers would catch up fast to what the Russians have. And this is from, he's following Fox's Lucas Tomlinson on Twitter. Some of the 4 U.S. Navy destroyers dispatched to Europe have entered the Mediterranean to bolster NATO forces amid Russian tensions. So, give you an idea, and this is the latest of where Russia has their naval forces, and this is the Mediterranean Sea. Most of their stuff is in the Western Mediterranean, and I reported a little bit on this last night or the night before, and the thing that to do pay attention to is Russia has a couple of naval bases over here in the Eastern Mediterranean at Latakia in Caesarea and Tartus in Syria. keep your eye right down here. This is Israel. You can see the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. So Israel's right in here. And the point being is, ultimately where all this is going from a scripture standpoint, Ezekiel 38 and 39, and we have Russia's invasion along with friends from Turkey, Iran, Libya, the Sudan, and some other countries, as Scripture calls it. And the reason this is so significant is the massive buildup in air, naval, military, armed forces that Russia has roughly 50 to 60% of its assets in and around Ukraine. So we're talking at least 130,000 soldiers, approximately 100 battalion tactical groups. So we got a lot of stuff. And for those of you who have followed Czekmate and some of his commentary, the reason they take the Crimean Peninsula right here, it provides them a way to get down into the Middle East as a port, as a launching point. It's like Czekmate calls it the umbilical cord to the Middle East, the Crimean Peninsula. So, of course, Russia cares about what's going on in Ukraine. Also, they care about it because of oil and gas. So if you've been following this for any time, you know where this is coming from. So moving down, Czekmate will also provide links to articles he finds interesting, offers up some commentary and analysis. An interesting take from one of Czekmate's go-to guys on all things Russia. This is from Newsweek. Putin's war plans are far from popular. The role of domestic public opinion should not be underestimated, even in Russia. So if you want to read about, what one author's opinion is on public opinion in Russia on what Putin's doing, I recommend you read this. I'm not going to get into that sort of stuff. My main objective here this evening is give you a flavor for what Czekmate has to offer on ValorTube. And mind you, this is just today. I think he put up like 16, 17 things. So he's got all kinds of information, analysis, commentary, thoughts on some of this stuff. So you do want to check it out, especially if you're very interested in taking a deeper dive into international geopolitics. This is also tonight. NATO ambassadors have convened a highly unusual Friday night meeting to discuss increased concerns about Russian military planning. Czekmate's comment: from personal experience, the workaholics in Brussels usually have hopped trains to London and Paris by now for the weekend. So it is unusual for these folks to have Friday night meetings to discuss their concerns about Russia. Also, he has some comments from CNN Natasha Bertrand. New, confirming at Kiev Post, the U.S. is planning to pull its observers from the OSCE mission in Ukraine, sources say. The Biden administration is also discussing the possibility of further reducing the number of staff at the U.S. Embassy in Kiev, moving either out of the country or further west. So, Czekmate's comment: ceasefire violations appear to be much higher in the recent days and weeks. And that would be in reference to what's going on over here on the Russian-Ukraine border. There have been little skirmishes going on. And you have separatists over here in the eastern part of Ukraine who are friendly to the Russians. And Russia, of course, doesn't mind supporting those folks to achieve their political gains in Ukraine. So there are if you've been paying attention, you'll see little fights, missiles getting fired into Ukraine from these, quote, separatists that think they're armed by the Russians, have the support of the Russians. So you have those things going on. And they're probably escalating some of that stuff. UK Foreign Office advises against all travel from the UK, United Kingdom, to Ukraine, and advised British nationals to leave the country. And that's something that's developing here this evening. We got all kinds of embassies who are advising people to get out of Ukraine. I think I saw South Korea, Japan, to name a few. You had some European countries also joining the chorus telling their diplomats and their nationals to get out of Ukraine and head home. So, things are picking up pace as we speak. News: the U.S. believes Putin has decided to invade Ukraine and communicated those plans to the Russian military. 3 officials tell at Nick Schifrin, 2 administration officials say they expect the invasion to begin next week, echoing what Secretary of State Blinken has said. Czekmate's comment is it could be put differently. President Putin concluded that Biden's staff is a bigger bunch of useful idiots that he could have dreamed of than he could have dreamed of. He has conveyed orders that his operations plan promulgated to the general staff on January 21st, 2020 proceed. So, anyway, things again picking up. This is something, and this gives you a flavor too of some things that are going on that aren't necessarily Russia and Ukraine. So the backdrop of this story and why it's important as it relates to Ezekiel 38 and 39, Turkey all of a sudden is wanting to be a little cozy with Israel. And to the point that President Erdogan of Turkey is even agreeable to potentially ship Israeli gas through Turkey, and then Turkey, of course, could ship that gas energy to Western Europe for sale. So Turkey wants to play a middleman in some of the gas coming out of Israel and make a few bucks as a middleman. And so they've even, to the point, showing that, hey, we can get along with you, Israel, despite all the rhetoric that comes out of there a lot of time. Money's a big deal because Turkey's in trouble. Their currency's crashing. Inflation's taken over. So they're having some economic difficulties. And it says, report Turkish intelligence foils Iranian plot to assassinate Israeli businessmen. And that's from israelhayom.com. And Turkey's national intelligence organization, known as the MIT, recently uncovered an Iranian plot to assassinate an Israeli-Turkish businessman, using a network of alleged blah, blah, blah. So keeping an eye on this. He's a bit skeptical, especially when MIT and Mossad cooperate. Doesn't sound like your two most natural pair, but in Checkmate's mind, it may as well be Barnum and Bailey Intelligence Liaison Production. So guy's very clever in the way he puts his stuff out. This is Barak Ravid. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was expected to arrive in Israel next Monday, but postponed his trip earlier this week, Israeli officials tell me. So I'm going to talk about this one later. This was a discussion last night that Checkmate and I were having about Russia's ultimate intentions, and I'm going to go into that in depth later. But ultimately, Scripture tells us this ends up in Israel. Russia and friends end up in Israel's doorstep. So we'll cover that later this evening. Social media is going really active. Dutch people in Ukraine must leave the country as soon as possible. That is the very urgent advice issued by the Dutch ambassador in Kiev. The Dutch received the advice this afternoon during a digital meeting that lasted less than an hour. Breaking: Israel is evacuating the families of its diplomats from Kiev. Scoop: U.S. and allies have new intel that suggests Russia could be planning to attack Ukraine prior to the end of the Olympics, which is February 20th. And this is contrary to previous assessments. New intel comes as officials have dramatically ramped up the urgency of public warnings related to Ukraine in the past 24 hours. Again, this is from some CNN jackals. Kiev is among the targets identified in the Russian planning. Sources tell me at Katie Bo Lillis, at Jim Shudo. Blinken said Friday that a Russian invasion, quote, could begin at any time, including during Olympics, that the U.S. continues to see very troubling. The Norwegian Department of Foreign Affairs now discourages all travel to Ukraine and encourage Norwegian citizens to leave the country. Do not travel advice also includes Belarus, except Minsk, and all areas in Russia within 250 kilometers of the Ukraine border. See, in Jackals again, somebody is sleeping with a J2 guy, if this is accurate. More, the administration could declassify some of its intel today, per Kylie Atwood, a European defense official, said the North Atlantic Council will be discussing the situation and the new intelligence today as well, per Marcotte A. At Marcotte A. I assume that's at Twitter. So lots of stuff going on. He breaks this stuff down. Checkmate breaks it down for you. Via social media, as Checkmate said, keep an eye on the separatists. And this would be the folks we were talking about over earlier in eastern Ukraine. The leader of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic claims that they have found 130 mass field graves of civilians killed by the Ukrainian army, totaling 5,000 dead. Obviously a false claim, but probably enough to be used as a casus belli by Putin. So another reason, just a reason to start a war. That's all they're looking for. So again, Donetsk, that's this area right here in the southwest, southeast. The southeast portions of the Ukraine is where this is referring to. More social media. I mean, these folks, that's the other thing too. And I can tell you, doing my website at paulthepoke.com, you get information from folks in this part of the world. I've had people specifically in the Caucasus in the past. This happened prior to the Georgian invasion, and they sent me all kinds of stuff, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know if it was credible or if somebody was just pulling my leg. Well, it turned out to be true. And so, and the thing that's different this time around, Checkmate knows some of these folks and trusts them, and you get information. And it usually runs about a day to 3 days ahead of our press. And it just happens the way it's explained. So you'll be seeing this stuff probably 1 to 3 days later in our press, if it shows up at all. Minister Dmytro Kubela left the following on social media. We have officially triggered the risk reduction mechanism in accordance with paragraph 3 of the Vienna document, and requested Russia to provide detailed explanations on military activities in the areas adjacent to the territory of Ukraine and in the temporarily occupied Crimea. According to the Vienna document, Russia needs to provide detailed explanation on the objectives, precise location, dates, and completion of its military activities, as well as designation, subordination, number, and types of formations, as well as types of equipment involved. Russia has 48 hours to reply. In case of absence of reply or its insufficiency, irrelevance, Ukraine will address Russia, as well as other participating states of the Vienna document, in order to convene an extraordinary meeting where Russia will have to provide explanations. Right. We will keep using all diplomatic means to ensure security of Ukraine. Okay. Checkmate says, worked on this particular confidence and security building measure while assigned to the European Regional Security at the State Department. This is the essential use of this piece of diplomacy. Why the government of Ukraine took this long to use paragraph 3 is a matter of some speculation. Russia uses its prerogative to maximum effect as a matter of routine. Checkmate would argue that they abuse these instruments. The response is likely to be a dud, but we will be interested to read it at any rate. Now, this is Paul Lehr, Paul the Poke's personal opinion. Obviously, I'm not a trained diplomat, but I think there's no way in hell Russia fills any of this stuff out, tells them where their people are, what their intent is, designation, subordination, number, and types of formation. They're not talking. There's no way they're telling them what they're going to do. Ain't happening. Now this is fascinating. Since the canceling activity of the Sea of Azov, other exercise areas have been expanded. Courtesy of the Black Sea News, here are the latest NOTAM and NAVTEX notified bounding areas for Russian naval gunnery exercises over the next 8 days. I believe this is the Sea of Azov. I think that's correct. They'd shut some things down in that area. Big picture. Here's the Black Sea Crimean Peninsula right here, which is Russian occupied, used to be part of Ukraine. I want to say it's the Crimean where they signed all the documents to end World War II, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe out over my skis there. Lucas Tomlinson at Fox, U.S. Air Force moving F-16 fighter jets from Germany to Romania Friday. Germany to Romania. So U.S. moving fighter jets from Germany to Romania, and that matters. Russian assets in Moldova. Also, you would have access to the Black Sea, where Russia has a lot of its naval sources. So we'd be talking about moving some stuff down in this area. And then also the United States earlier moving some naval assets into the Western Mediterranean at this time. And that pretty much catches you up to date. And that's a flavor of what you'll get at the Czekmate, the Fighting Czekmate group on valortube.com. So for you folks who are interested in a deeper dive, you want to keep up with the geopolitical events, the latest information, intelligence of what's taking place in the theater on the Ukraine-Russian border, Belarus, in and around the Mediterranean and Black Sea. I couldn't recommend this guy enough. Great guy. Knows his stuff. Has been ridiculously helpful in helping me understand this. And then also, taking a look at this through the eyes of Scripture, Ezekiel 38 and 39. And I've known Czekmate for I think roughly a year now. I thought we were close before I knew a lot of the things that we've talked about. He's shown me, and I'm telling you, it may be a ways off, but it sure looks like it's getting really, really close. And I dare say we are on the verge of some things happening at a pretty quick pace. And, you move that many resources in and around one area. You control the Crimean Peninsula. I'll get the map up. You move all these resources, roughly half to 60% of your resources, military resources if you're Russia, into this area of the world. You have a little boundary here. And you control this. All you got to do is just drop your stuff down. And you are right here. And this is where it all ultimately goes down. The Golan Heights and the mountains of Israel. And that's where they're going to set up shop and try to invade Israel. God's got another thing coming. I think, obviously they've got a lot of resources. Russia has a lot of resources in Syria. They have ports again in Latakia, which is located right here. Tartus, which is located further south. They have the Eastern Mediterranean full of naval resources. Also the Black Sea full of naval resources. And it's not a stretch. And again, considering the Crimean Peninsula is the umbilical cord, if you will, to the Middle East. This doesn't appear to be very far away. Granted, we don't know for sure, but it is worth watching. So appreciate you guys following along, paying attention this evening. Stay tuned. Try to give you the most up-to-date, recent information as best as we can. Thanks a lot. Have a great evening. Bye.